Today I give you all my biggest takeaways from the past weekend of football. It was NFL Week 3, college football Week 4, and I'll let you know everything you need to know. I'm Nathan Gustafson, and this is Clutch Time. As always, we're going to start with our college football takes first, the first of which is that Justin Fields is going to play football on Sundays. This guy is bound for the NFL, 6 touchdowns in a freaking quarter in college football. I get that it was against a bad team, but what he can do throwing the football, running the football, this kid is extremely, extremely talented. We're still a few years away, but for all the hype that Trevor Lawrence got from one game of football, you're not seeing near the attention going toward Justin Fields. He got his first road test in Indiana against a fairly bad team, although they are a Big Ten football team. They're not a horrible football program. He has his first real test coming up this weekend in Nebraska. I think that it's going to be a big indicator if he can continue to put up the numbers he has so far this season against these higher caliber teams that he's going to be playing against, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nebraska. I think that if he continues this trend, his draft stock is going to continually rise over the next 2 to 3 years, depending on whether or not Justin wants to go back for his senior year of college. But this kid is incredibly, incredibly talented. And I think that we're already seeing with him as a redshirt freshman that this kid is going to play on Sundays. My second takeaway is this. Georgia doesn't look to me to be on par with LSU and Alabama. Now, I picked them at the beginning of the year to win the national title. My takeaway was best offensive line in college football in the entire country. DeAndre Swift running behind them, who I believe to be the most talented running back in all of college football. And then Fromm is serviceable. I think that they should have kept Fields over Fromm personally. But I certainly think that Fromm is still a talented quarterback. They return most of their starters on defense, and I think that last year they were burnt near beating Alabama and making it to the playoff over them anyway. But so far this season, getting tested by Dame at home, you go into a game as 14.5-point favorites, and they have you in the first half. Georgia just did not impress me. They didn't look good. It was a home game. I get that Notre Dame is a higher caliber team than a lot of what these other teams have faced so far. That's a very difficult out-of-conference game for them. But I expected to see more from them. I didn't expect them to get pushed at home by Notre Dame, who, although they came into the week ranked 7th in the country, I don't really think they're a top 10 team in the country. And I really don't think that Georgia was visually impressive in that football game. And, you take that and then you watch Tua throwing 5 touchdowns, Joe Burrow throwing 6 touchdowns. The LSU and Bama offense is sort of being explosive. Georgia doesn't look like they can stack up with that right now. Based on what I saw from their first game against a good team, I think that LSU would have put it on Notre Dame a lot worse. I think that LSU looked much more impressive in their game against Texas, which was on the road in Austin. And obviously Alabama, there's a certain level of play that you're going to have to beat them. And from what I saw this weekend, Georgia didn't look like they're going to stack up. Now, what I will say is there's a lot of time left. I fully expect them to turn it back around. I think they're still a national title contender, still a top 5 team in the country, but visually just a really unimpressive game at home from Notre Dame. I really expected more this weekend. All right, this one is somewhat obvious that Wisconsin is the greatest threat to another Ohio State playoff appearance. Michigan had their chance on the road. Jim Harbaugh now 0-7 as an underdog since he got back to Michigan as a head coach. Michigan looked horrible this weekend, which is nothing new for them this year. Wisconsin sort of established themselves, I believe, as the second best team in the Big Ten. We've seen Michigan State lose to Arizona State. Penn State hasn't been overwhelmingly good. I think that it really, at this point, stands out that Wisconsin, led by Jonathan Taylor, is the greatest threat to Ohio State winning the Big Ten and making another college football playoff appearance. And even at that, I think that Wisconsin is a very distant second to Ohio State. I do believe that Ohio State will eventually run them in the Big Ten title game. But with that being said, Wisconsin really established themselves as the greatest threat to Ohio State making the playoff again. My fourth takeaway is this. Who the heck is playing football in Louisiana right now down in Baton Rouge? It looks like the LSU Ducks or something because they are not playing defense. And I've never seen in my entire life an LSU offense that can put points on the board like this. But with that being said, I'm wondering if it's sort of creating a mental state for their defense, like, this is what it's like to have an offense. Maybe we don't have to play so well. Well, it's working against Vandy because you put up 66 on them, but giving up 38 points to Vandy, giving up 38 points to Texas, giving up 38 points isn't going to cut it when you play Alabama. It's not going to cut it when you play Georgia if you get there. So for LSU moving forward, I think that there's sort of questions on their defense that I did not think were there coming into the year. At the outset of the season, I believed that this LSU Tiger defense was the best one in the entire country. But after giving up 38 points consecutively to Vanderbilt and Texas with one buffer game against a really bad team in there, I don't think it's a good look for this defense. I expect more from Christian Fulton. Obviously, Rashard Lawrence got hurt in that Texas game. He was out this past weekend. That's a fairly good excuse because even though he's an interior lineman, he's probably their best pass rusher. But you expect more from guys. And really, I think Grant Delpit, who last year sort of had a lot to prove, came out and I thought was arguably a top 2 to 3 defensive player in the entire country. And this year, he just hasn't looked the same to me. He's missed tackles. It hasn't been the Grant Delpit I saw last year, and it makes me wonder if all the hype that he was getting coming into the year sort of got in his head. I like to think that that's not the case, and really, I expect this LSU defense to get back on track, but they're going to have to if they want to have any chance to compete with Alabama. My final takeaway is this: the Pac-12 is going to be won or lost in Week 8 when Oregon and Washington square off. We saw Utah fail to win a game against USC. I don't think that USC is built to compete with Washington or Oregon, and because of that, I think that when in Week 8, Oregon's going to travel to Washington, and that is going to be where this conference is won or lost. The winner of that game will go on to win the conference and eventually stomp on either USC or Arizona State in a conference title game. I don't think Washington State can get there after blowing that lead to UCLA. Their defense looks awful, and ultimately, I think it comes down to these two teams. I think Eason's been impressive. I think Herbert's been impressive. I think the Oregon defense has been better than it's been in a very long time. And I think that Washington is still very competitive. I think that's going to be a great game, but Week 8 is going to be when the Pac-12 is decided this year. Moving on to my NFL takes, the first of the week is that the Lions aren't bad. I'm not saying they're great. I'm not saying they're very good. They're not bad. They've now beaten the Chargers and Eagles, two teams that I firmly believe, despite both being 1 and 2, are top 10 teams in football. You're going to see a lot of people overreacting. I saw in NFL.com's power rankings this morning that the Bills are apparently the 6th best team in football, and the Eagles and Chargers are both outside the top 15. And I started laughing my ass off. I mean, it's really just a joke. That's what it is. It is a complete joke, the very notion that the Bills are better than either of those teams. What they should really name their power rankings are who has the best record this week, who won this past week, because that's what it is. They know that the Eagles are better than the Bills. They know that the Chargers are better than the Bills. Those are two top 10 teams. I know they've gotten off to bad starts, but the Lions have beaten both of them. There has to be something there. Obviously, in the Charger game, there were some missed kicks, and in the Eagle game, there were some drops. So maybe stuff's just bouncing their way. I don't know, but I don't think they're a bad football team. I don't think they can win their division because it's too good. I don't think they can make the playoffs because their division's too good. But the Lions aren't a bad football team, and Matthew Stafford looks really good to start this year. My second take of the way is this: Cam Newton should not lose his job yet. A lot of people are already calling for it. They want him gone. Kyle Allen comes out and throws 4 more touchdowns in one game than Cam's thrown in his last 2. Cam has lost 8 consecutive starts. I really think this boils down to Cam being hurt. I'm not going to overreact to 1 week of football. I don't think that Kyle Allen is suddenly the guy of the future in Carolina. But what I will say is this: he looks considerably better. So until Cam Newton's healthy, you have a guy you can go to. So I definitely would not go to Cam until I know for a fact that shoulder is healed. And once I can tell there's a difference again with Cam. But Kyle Allen would have to stack up some very impressive performances to take a job from Cam Newton, who I still believe to be a very capable, very good quarterback when healthy and when able to compete. Obviously, Cam has some accuracy issues, some inconsistency problems, but I don't think that he should lose his job over one game, not even close to that. A lot of people saying that I think are wrong. But with that being said, I say the word yet, because if Kyle Allen is able to stack up consistent performances like he was able to do on Sunday against the Cardinals, there's going to be a tough decision to be made in Carolina. My third takeaway is this: do not panic, Chargers. Do not worry. A lot of people already jumping ship on the Chargers. Oh, they're not the same this year. They're taking a step back. They can't do it without Derwin. The way I see it is this: they're 1 and 2. You know what they were last year at this point? 1 and 2. Okay, they're still a top 3 team in the AFC. They're still a top 7 to 8 team in football. And there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to be around in January when football's being played. Phillip Rivers will have these guys ready to go. Him, Keenan Allen, Big Mike, solid offensive line, arguably best pass rushing duo in the league, Ingram and Bosa. Their secondary is solid enough. The Chargers are going to be fine. They'll be playing football in January, and I would not worry at all about a 1 and 2 start. That is the exact record they had at this point last year. Fourth takeaway is this: well, the Chargers might not be done. The Steelers are. The Steelers are done. put a fork in them, they're out, they're done, that's it, and they're stupid for trading away their pick. Minkah Fitzpatrick is extremely, extremely talented. And I think he's a good player, a good piece to have going forward. But what are you thinking trading away your first pick when Big Ben went down? Okay, a safety can't make that big of an impact. This could potentially be a top 5 pick. They could potentially be in a position to snag a Justin Herbert. If Tua were to go number 1, I think Herbert should go 1. If Justin Herbert's there at the 2nd, 3rd, 4th pick, and you just traded away your pick that could have been in that spot to get a safety, it just doesn't make any sense to me. You have to be planning for the future at this point. Big Ben at 37 years old just had an injury that's going to sideline him for the rest of the year. A guy that has absorbed a ton of hits throughout his career. And while I certainly have a lot of respect for the way Big Ben plays football, his football career has to be coming to a close. Even if he plays 1 to 2 more years, you have to be planning in the future if you're Pittsburgh. And I think that they were just stupid for trading that pick away in a year where you have an option to snag a potential long-time franchise stud quarterback in Justin Herbert out of Oregon. If not him, maybe it is Tua. But you could have gotten your guy for the future. And instead, you're sitting around picking up a safety to play with your backup quarterback in hopes that next year, your 38-year-old at the time, Big Ben, who's taken a ton of hits in his career, can come back and lead you to a Super Bowl. And I just don't see that as being practical, logical, or reasonable. And I think this was a really bad move by the Steelers. My 5th takeaway is this. For all the heat that the Texans GM-less front office got for trading away multiple picks for Laramie Tunsil, they looked pretty freaking smart on Sunday when they were able to hold that outstanding Chargers pass rush to only 2 sacks the entire game. They kept them away from Deshaun Watson. Laramie Tunsil played an outstanding football game, and I think that sort of validated giving up those picks to bring in Watson. You played a top 3 AFC team on the road and were able to win the football game, due in large part to the decision made to bring in an offensive lineman to protect Deshaun Watson. I think that is going to end up being a good move by the Texans. And I think for all the people that just ripped them to shreds for making that trade, I think that the Texans front office really took a dub on Sunday. That was a big win for them and a big boost for this team to be able to beat a competitor like that on the road. My 6th takeaway is this. The Packers are the best team in the NFC. Everyone else can freak out about the Cowboys. Everyone can over-exaggerate like they always do and get super excited because they beat 3 god-awful teams. I'm not buying into it. I think the Cowboys are certainly a playoff contender and a good football team. Do I think that they're a Super Bowl threat? No, I do not. Do I think that Dak Prescott is a Super Bowl winning quarterback? No, I do not. But, per usual with sports media, they're going to freak out and go bananas and go stupid, go crazy over freaking Dak beating 3 bad teams. So that's fine. They're going to do their thing. Go ahead. Go for it. The Eagles are 1-2. I still believe they'll win the NFC East. I still believe they're a better team than the Dallas Cowboys. But do they look on par with the Packers right now? No. I do think they might win on Thursday because I think their backs are against the wall going into that football game. With that being said, I think that today the Packers are a much better team than the Eagles with all the injuries they've dealt with. Do I think the Saints can compete with Drew Brees out? And they look good on Sunday, but do I think they're better than the Packers? No. The Packers beat the Vikings. The Bears are limited because of Mitch. The only real argument that you could say is a better team than the Packers is the Rams. And at the end of the day, I'm looking at the Packers and I like their team better. I like a lot of what's going on in Green Bay right now. I think that Aaron Rodgers is finally in a position for success for the first time in a long time. And I think that today, right now, the team to beat in the NFC is the Green Bay Packers. My 7th takeaway is this. Don't be fooled. Lamar Jackson was 13 of 29 and the Ravens were losing 30-13 in the 4th quarter. Now, obviously people are going to try to sell this to you. Oh, these were 2 great teams with 2 great quarterbacks going head to head. Let's put Lamar Jackson on Patrick Mahomes level. Yeah. No. Come on. He was 13 for 29. He couldn't complete a pass against an allegedly bad defense. He was inaccurate. Like I said, he couldn't complete passes. He couldn't move the chains. He couldn't keep his team in the game. And then at the end of the game, the Chiefs went into prevent defense, let him take a bunch of checkdowns to wide open receivers with no one near him because they were just preventing an over-the-top play. And even then, he had to send a couple prayers up into the air to complete passes. I mean, he just didn't look good. He was visually unimpressive. 13 for 29, losing by 17 points in the 4th quarter. This was not a competitive football game. They got a backdoor cover. Who cares? Really, does it matter? Are we going to pretend because the final score was only 5-point difference that this was a close game? Of course it wasn't. They got blown out of the water. They were getting smacked in the 4th quarter and he got a couple garbage touchdowns that mean nothing to anyone. That's really what this game was. We saw Patrick Mahomes, you saw Lamar Jackson, you saw them on the same field, and you saw the difference. There's a massive, colossal, enormous, gargantuan difference between these two quarterbacks. And if you can't see that, then I feel genuinely sorry for you. You were either blind or stupid. Patrick Mahomes, like this guy is terrifying. He might be the best player to ever step on a football field. That's the path he's headed toward. I've never seen anyone do the things that Patrick Mahomes can do throwing the football. And if it isn't unfair already, what the kid does pre-snap, it's incredible. It's crazy. Lamar Jackson doesn't compare. He's 13 for 29. He couldn't complete a pass. Give me a break on that one. It was a close game, was it? Was it two great teams? I like Baker Mayfield going into Baltimore this week. I don't buy this at all. And the Chiefs stuck it to the Ravens this week. Don't be fooled into thinking anything else. One of my takes last week was that the AFC South is up for grabs. My take this week is that the NFC South is up for grabs. All of a sudden, the Carolina Panthers look like they have new life, with Cam being able to get healthy, while Kyle Allen, who seems to be very competent, filling in that spot while Cam recovers from a shoulder injury. That looks like a big boost for the Panthers. Their offense looked great on Sunday. Meanwhile, Teddy Bridgewater was able to lead the Saints to a big road win in Seattle, one of the hardest places to play in the league. They finally gave Alvin Kamara the ball north of 20 times in a game, which is exactly what they should be doing. And the Saints all of a sudden look really good. And then for the Falcons, this was a chance for them to pick up a game in the division, which they did not take a chance of. I actually think they could have gained a full game this weekend. They suffer a tough loss in Indianapolis. I do not think this was a good outcome for them at all. And then the Bucs got back to playing Bucs football and missing game-winning field goals against bad teams at home, because that's what the Bucs do, playing a quarterback in their first game, giving up 4 touchdowns. Good to see the Bucs back to their losing ways. But for the other 3 teams in this division, it is completely up for grabs, and I think that any of the 3 can win it. Despite sort of the bad outcome for the Falcons, I definitely think that they could still be in it moving forward because of Drew Brees' absence. And the same goes for the Panthers. This should be the time for both of these 2 teams to be picking up games right now. But as long as Bridgewater can play the way he did on Sunday, I think the Saints should be the favorites, but I can certainly see any of the 3 winning it. My 9th takeaway of the week is that the Giants finally made the right decision benching Eli Manning. There's been a lot of stuff in the media about Eli Manning, whether or not he's a Hall of Famer. I think he is. I think he had a very good career that's been diminished by 3 god-awful consecutive seasons right now at the tail end of it. I think he should have retired 3 years ago. He's just depleting his name at this point. He's ruining his reputation as a quarterback, and he's leaving behind a memory of really just god-awful, terrible football. That's what's being left of Eli Manning. We've seen his corpse playing football for the last 3 years. He's been truly atrocious, and I feel like because that is going to be the most recent, fresh memory for a lot of people, it's going to go down and really hurt him and the legacy that he leaves behind. But finally, the Giants make the right decision for him, benching him, bringing in their rookie Daniel Jones. Now, I've only seen 1 game. I didn't watch a lot of him at Duke, and I don't know whether or not Daniel Jones is really as good as he played on Sunday. But what I will say is this: the Giants definitely did the right thing, giving themselves a chance to see what they have with him, because at this point, Eli Manning was just not getting any sort of job done. He looked horrible, and even if you don't think Daniel Jones is completely ready, at least you're taking a chance, and he looked great on Sunday. So hats off to the Giants for finally doing the right thing and giving their young quarterback a chance to play football. My final takeaway is this: something has got to change in Philly. The drops, the defensive errors, the terrible coverage, the running the football way too much, in my opinion, not giving Carson Wentz a chance to win football games. This, for all the great pass rushes they have on their line, they don't look like they're getting pressure on the quarterback. Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, these guys are talented. What are you doing? Why are you not putting heat on the quarterback? I get that having a bad secondary has to take a mental toll, but at some point you got to say enough's enough and get after the quarterback, and they haven't done it so far this year. And Philly just does not look very good through 3 games. Now, I have a lot of faith in this team. I've said this in the past. I have a lot of faith in Carson Wentz. You guys know, if you've watched any of my old episodes, I picked them to go to the Super Bowl before the year started. I still think they need to trade for a defensive back, but Philly is still a very good football team. I still have a ton of faith in Wentz and a ton of faith in this front 7. But something has to change. At some point, they need to light a fire, and they need to get stuff going and leave it all out there on the field. I think that actually starts Thursday against Green Bay. They're going to have their backs against the wall. Green Bay, meanwhile, is riding high. Even if Philly goes in and beats them on their home field, I still think Green Bay would be the team to beat in the NFC. But at this point, the desperate dog, the Eagles, needs to have the biggest bite. They need to go out there and fight for it. They need to win this football game. And it's going to mean everything for this team moving forward if they want to compete. Because Dallas, while Philly opened the year with 3 tough games, Dallas has opened the year against 3 horrible football teams, and that's why they're 3-0. So if Philly wants to have any chance to compete going forward, they're going to have to step up. They're losing ground way too quickly, and this is a really big game on Thursday for them. All right, I know I've promised it the last 2 weeks. We had some technical difficulties this past week, but finally I am going to get you my all-time NFL starting 22 as compared to the crap list released by ESPN. Thanks for watching.